So it was the same, it just gave us history and story for those folks who had no idea what Leandro was about. You know, a lot of new people had moved into the state. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education to order. Members of the board, what is your pleasure in regards to the approval of the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Powell?
I move we approve the agenda for the work session on March 17th for the Wilson County Board of Education.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by Mr. Breen, that the agenda for the work session for the Wilson County Board of Education be approved. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by the sign of aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously with the 5 members that are here. This meeting is being televised on Spectrum and Greenlight Channel 22 and live streamed through the Wilson County Schools YouTube channel. The public can also view the meeting through the links on the Wilson County Schools Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, and the Wilson County Schools website. Members of the board and those in the audience, would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by a moment of silence. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As Mrs. Barnes comes to join us, have we heard from Mr. Mercer?
I have not.
Are we going to need to do any Zoom with him?
I have not heard so.
Okay,
Wasn't anticipating that.
all right. Members of the board and to our public, we are here again talking about our facilities. Whether or not the agenda for us changes, our priorities, we've had the opportunity to meet with, here he comes now,
Okay.
with our county commissioners in a joint meeting, as had been mentioned previously, and it is sending us back to the drawing board, and we eagerly await the report from the administration as in terms of potential directions and what it is that we will be working towards and looking forward to. So, welcome, Mr. Mercer.
Thank you.
So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Mills for whatever intro and discussion points he wants to present to us. Dr. Mills?
Madam Chair, board members and others, I have some handouts to kind of go through as we start today. And not kind of knowing where the board wanted to go, I've got a little bit of everything for us to get through today. So I'll walk us through and I'll hand out some of these other pieces as we go. But we talked about several different items over the last year or so. So I've tried, and senior staff and others, and
Liz is raising her hand.
y'all need some too. You can help me that way. We've looked through what we've looked at over the last year or so, and so we tried to capture many different projects after our conversation with the commissioners, and this is just the first conversation for us to get started. I think that it's going to take some, I'm just going to go ahead and forewarn you, one of the items will be we need to set some regular meetings like we did with policy if we're really going to get through this and stick with some timelines and get some things done. But we looked at this as a laundry list of things until the board's set some priorities on some projects and So we tried to capture the kind of institutional memory of what's been the discussion over the last little bit. So a couple things we want to do was just kind of give you an update on some projects and where we are, and then start getting into some of the issues. And we can go through everything and then circle back, or we can stop as we go. It's up to y'all. I'll leave that up to you as we go. But I want to kind of show you where we were with some of the projects that you've heard about. Watt is on track for completion, the end of February. And I've got some pictures in your handouts and on the screen. You see the brickwork. Mr. Letchworth says this is around the gym area. But if you look at the other parts of the project, it is amazing how much is done so far. And we were so concerned at one point about just having access to steel. If you remember that, that was the thing we were worried. Was it going to show up? If it does, is it going to be on time? But seeing walls up and seeing roofing going in and all, it really makes it real. And there's one shot in particular I think is really kind of cool. Mr. Letchworth and Greg and them were up on the roof yesterday. I'm not going up there just yet.
Up on what roof? Gervis?
Somewhere up there. I'm not going up there till they get a little more handrails for people like me. But
I'm gonna let y'all go up there and just
yeah,
tell me about
they
it.
can do it. But as you can see, it's starting to look like a school. It's starting to look like the design pictures that we saw, and you can start seeing it flesh out. I just can't get over how fast it's going.
Ms. Powell's been putting on her hard hat and going over on a daily basis since it's so close to her home.
And I ride by
Like
every
an elf,
day.
just working at night.
And I too have been riding by looking at it, and it's just amazing seeing the cranes go up and the steel go up, and they're a friendly bunch, because sometimes they'll even wave at you when you go through.
It is wonderful to look at. It's amazing to see how
It's really
it
cool.
is now.
Knowing that Ms. Powell is keeping a close eye on them, probably got a lot more done.
A lot of pressure there, a lot of pressure. But you can see, this was a really cool shot with the roofing and the edges. That's why they would go up there. Somebody's got to go up on a ladder at that point. But you can see the wall of the gym on the backside and some of the roofing going up, decking anyway.
Do they have to have on those safety belts? Of course, you're not a construction person, but when they go up, they shouldn't they?
Yes, ma'am, that's what the cables are laying on that roof line to clip off to.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, okay.
Yeah, we'll wait a little bit.
Question real quick. Is this a flat roof?
It is a slope roof to the drains like we've been doing.
Okay,
So, yeah,
all right.
yeah. It'll be tapered down to each drain.
If Miss Woodard was here, she'd say it is a flat roof. Now,
Yeah.
Miss Woodard was
She was deaf on that
she was-
flat roof.
She was rough on that flat roof with that one little bit of pitch, so. Here's another shot of all the steel work across, so you can see across the 301 and Ward. And then I think this next one is the cool shot. Oh, no, one more, I think. That's the inner vestibule kind of section of the school.
Elevator shaft sticking up from underneath, and looking through the clear story from the second floor, looking down.
This is the one I thought was cool. You see across the street, like right through a window would be. I'm just looking at it. It's amazing. So it is on track, it is rolling, and Ms. Powell's elf work, as Mr. Breen said at night, is really paying off, because it's going up fast. So I think we'll be on track. So, in the fall, we'll be coming back talking about transition plans and what we'll need to do for the remaining of the semester and how we're going to do all that. So that'll be part of that conversation coming up from a facility standpoint, and that's an exciting time. But things have gone really well. Questions on what so far?
Just compliments to Mr. Letchworth and his crew. They are really on top of things, and we have a really intelligent. I'm just trying to make him smile. A wonderful man on board,
Thank you.
taking care of things.
Did he smile? I didn't look, I looked up and he.
A half smile.
The 8-lane track at Benningfield, those bids are ready, and they'll be coming to the board on Monday at the board meeting. And these images here were just some from the lighting plan and some of the drawings, but those are on track to come to you this coming Monday at the board meeting.
I have a question, Dr. Mills.
Yes,
Since
ma'am.
we've now gone to the 8-track, what about the surface? We talked about the surface being, I'm not a construction person, but the different textures, do you know?
Was it about the question about the lifts, the 2.5-inch lifts and the 2-inch?
No, it was just the surfacing of the track.
The type of material on the surface.
Standard,
I don't know what you would
surface
call
or-
it.
It'll be a urethane-based, it will not be a water-based
Okay,
product.
urethane. What's the difference?
Water-based doesn't stand up to the weather as good, so
Okay.
the urethane will be here. That's what we put at Fike was urethane.
Okay.
Got a little gloss to it too, doesn't it?
Yeah, the binders are quite a bit stronger to bind that rubber particle down.
Okay.
So that will be coming Monday. We just shared this with you at the February meeting. We've got some additional capital projects with the funding from the county for Barnes and Lee Woodard. That phase 1 piece is just selected the contractor for that. And then phase 2 will be forthcoming. We've got more to do on that. And that will be coming back to you at a later date. So we've got lots of things going on. And some of those are really big projects. So I just didn't want you to lose sight of the fact there's a lot of stuff that's taking place but still ongoing. Kind of gets hidden away. Of course, watch, you see it when you drive down the road, and it's, again, Miss Powell's up there with her elf shoes and her hammer, but the rest of them might not be as wide open right up on the street, but there's lots of work going on. But again, a lot of that's going to come to you next little bit too. Some other projects that you need to know about that just have happened. This is one that showed up in late February. This K-12 athletic facilities grant from DPI. We had to call DPI and call around and find out what this was because none of us remembered applying for it. So we kept asking everybody, did you apply for something? Did you apply? Did you send something in? And we didn't. It was actually granted to us from DPI. And so we got $123,823 to go towards K-12 athletic facilities. And so we found that out, and we have until July 30th, 2024 to use those funds. So we were looking at just applying those funds to go ahead and encumber them for the Fike tennis courts.
Will all of it be used toward the fight?
Yeah, we would use all that towards it, and that would offset some of the local funds from the county that we were using for that project, and that would free those up. So, and that would go ahead and get those off the books for before 2024 and have that clear.
If you use that 123,823, and deduct from the other funds, what kind of balance would that leave that had been designated for the fight courts?
I don't have that exact figure, roughly about 160,000 left.
About 160.
Yeah, roughly, I don't have that exact number.
Okay.
I have a question. Mr. Letchworth, what is the condition of the elementary areas where they have PE activities? Because a lot of the schools are trying to get walking tracks around them, and I know Barnes had someone that came in and did some things there. Could you tell me?
Yeah, some areas do have an asphalted area for play areas, and some do have walking tracks. We do have space to put walking tracks at different locations.
Okay. And what about for the physically disabled, the matting that they use? This is just off-the-wall questions. But the matting that they use at the Gillette Athletic Complex, they have something, I don't know what you would call it, for the children who are disabled can get out and romp and play without getting hurt.
Yeah, I know the schools that house some of those children do have some of those matting devices for areas that they play with, but I'm not sure how much we have on hand.
Okay.
Can I ask, just kind of piggy onto that? Yeah, if our county commissioners are already, wanting to spend money on the school system, why would we take a grant and give them the money back? Why wouldn't we take that money and put it towards, like, maybe playgrounds?
I don't think we're talking about.
No,
giving
we're not
money
giving money
back.
back.
No,
No. We're applying, we're using that money.
Redirect that money to something else.
No, we have to use those for some athletic facilities. So that frees up those monies from the county to use another project locally.
all right,
Yeah.
that's good.
I think,
No.
isn't it the
Ain't no give back.
rule of Stanley's,
I was
kind
making
of,
sure.
Art Stanley's rule of order, use categorical money every time you can and save the discretionary money?
This gives us more flexibility because the county money it doesn't come with these attachments to do just for athletics and by 2024. So we could go ahead and clear that off the books and have some flexibility to do some other projects.
All right, I just misunderstood you. I'm
No,
sorry.
that's fine, but, yeah, you're right, that would make, I would question that too, so. This was a good thing, and again, it was just out of the blue, which, you
You catch
usually
somebody
those are
giving
not
something.
nice things to get, so. We were all like, what, really, someone's gonna do this, so.
Blake, if you catch somebody giving some money back, we all need to know about it.
So that worked good.
Ms. Neely, please make sure that you print that in a favorable manner. We're keeping it. Thank you.
No money back.
We got plenty of
No
things we can do.
refunds.
The other update I wanted to give you was from the Needs-Based Public Schools Capital Fund. Remember, that's the fund that paid for Watt construction we just looked at. And this was for the new Frederick Douglass Elementary School application. We were only required to put in a 5% match. It can range from 5 to 25 or 35%, or for Tier 1 or Tier 2 counties this year. Applications were due March 15th, and you'll be happy to know our application was hand-delivered on March 10th. Talked to Nathan from DPI, because he was familiar with our project at Watt and has been down to do some other things, and so we delivered ours. And then the anticipated date for our notification of the awards for all those across the state is April 12th. Now that's not set in stone, but it's usually somewhere around there. They're doing better, I think, about getting the information out quicker this time than they were last time. So hopefully we'll hear something next month about that. That's a pretty quick turnaround. And so just in case you wanted a copy or for your records, I've got copies of the grant applications for you. There was a lot of support and a lot of neat comments from folks about the project that I think you should see, because it's very positive and it's very encouraging. So we're hopeful. I included some pictures just to kind of show you the face view of it. There's a discussion piece that I want you to start thinking about today. Today's going to be a lot of information, and then you may need some time to digest, but I want you to go ahead and start thinking about some of these as we go through. But Frederick Douglass footprint, as we talked about, is solid in that we've got plenty of room out there to rebuild on site, which was another thing that made that application a good one to apply for. So questions about needs-based from Frederick Douglass? I'd like to thank Renee Turner and Mark Letchworth and Greg Woodard and Ben Williams and all the folks that helped get support letters and reached out to people in the community and across the district, and especially the Elm City area, for the supporting documents. Ms. Powell contributed. So, I mean, it's really powerful when you start reading these applications. So they've got a hard decision to make, but it's a very strong application. And I think the other thing that may help us is we've been very conscientious from the Watt application in turning you in reports, and it is on timeline as well, and they're aware of that too. Okay. Questions? Okay. So what we try to do is just talk a little bit about, again, lists of things that we've talked about to get the board's pulse for where you want to go next. But we had some items from the field trip we talked about with the commissioners a while back. We'll give you an update on that, and then talk about what's remaining, and then go through some items to consider, and then we can maybe loop back and start working through and then decide our schedule for working through some of these items. So again, it's up to the board how you like to approach it. From the field trip, we've completed the paving at Bedingfield and Hunt High School. We've got the tennis courts completed from Hunt High School. We've got the lights installed for the baseball field at Pike High School. And the track at Bedingfield is underway. Again, you're going to get that information on Monday. Okay? The remaining items from the field trip, if you remember, we looked at renovations and discussions about the auditoriums at the high schools, the safety vestibules at Fike and Hunt. Remember, when you go in those front doors, unlike Bedingfield, once you're in the front door, you're in the building. There's no pause or stopping once those doors are open. And then we also toured the science labs at the 3 high schools. So those RFQs will be coming to you at the April board meeting. The other item from the field trip is the new track for Hunt High School. So we've got to have a discussion about that to get some information so we can talk to the county, and I've got that on a separate slide, so we need to narrow that down. So if you're looking at next steps from where we are and where we're headed, then we've got I've got some other items in the presentation to share with you. Again, we can loop through and come back and work through these, but we really need to talk about the track for Hunt High School. That was part of the discussion as we were doing Bedingfield and the other projects from the field trip. That's the last big one that we have not started. We've got to look at some decisions about school utilization and assignments. You know, we've had the ORED study, and then we had the meeting with the county commissioners, and you had the discussion with them in an informal setting, which was very positive, and the discussion was there was support for new elementary schools, and we've already talked about one elementary school being Frederick Douglass with the application for the needs-based public schools funds. So that would be on the current site. Again, we won't know about that funding, but soon we will, and then there'll be decision points about that if or when the funding does or does not come. But then there's a question about another school, because that was the discussion from the commissioners. So the board needs to talk about that and get ahead of that. We also need to start planning for Frederick Douglass's transition during construction. I've got some slides and information about that with some possibilities. Again, some of this information you may just want to digest today, and when we schedule our next meeting, which won't be long, so we've got to keep going, it's these are decision points, whether it comes to needs-based funding or funding from the county. Those decisions will have to be made early on, and will have logistical impacts for planning for the new school construction within the district. There's some additional items I want to share with you that you've talked about over time to refresh everyone and get these things up here. And there's some things I think would be projects that we could talk with the county about that I think make sense for both the county and the school system. And I'd like to just share those with you. And then I want us to set our meeting schedule. Sound good? Okay. All right, so if you're good, I'm going to loop through everything, and then we can come back through. Will that work for everybody?
Okay.
Okay. That way, we'll get through everything, and then we can come back up and we can set priorities. So, again, Hunt High School track, we've got to have a discussion on the project, and we've got to set a scope to get a funding level determined from the county commissioners. All right? The sooner we do that, the sooner we can get started, and we're dealing with sports seasons year-round at high schools. So that's got to start priority. So at some point, after we get through our list today, let's talk about getting this in front of the board and deciding what we're going to do. Okay? That's the one big item left over from the field trip. And I think we need to finish these field trip items before we take another field trip. But both the board and the commissioners have talked about wanting to take another field trip, and I think that's great. But I think we need to finish these before we do that. Or at least get that started. Does that make sense?
Getting direction we're going established at least.
Yes. I don't think we need to take another trip until we say we've done this or this is underway. That defeats the purpose. School utilization, I've mentioned this. There were, ORED came in, did land use study, enrollment forecast. They looked at various scenarios, looked at some consolidation, mentioned redistricting. You know, you've had some discussion with county commissioners regarding construction. That's going to take some decisions about school assignments, at least at some level. You've seen some scenarios. Those scenarios were predicated on closure of schools. So you've got to have discussion about whether it's closure or reassignment or consolidation. And bits and pieces, I've got some discussion in a later slide or two that you could have discussion about when we schedule our next meeting. So, but I think that's got to take place if we're going to do the construction piece, and we're going to talk to the commissioner about it. I think that's got to be a piece that is on the table and moving forward. Okay. So one thing that you need to be thinking about as we look through some of these questions is what information do you need to move ahead on that? I mean, we've got the study. It's not going to change a whole lot. We have had a discussion with some of the local planning departments to kind of see a trend. I've got some information just to kind of show you a pattern, not exact numbers, because I don't think that's really what you need today. But it's not going to change over the next little bit. So I just want you to be aware of that. So that's on your list. So here's one possibility that I think I just want you to digest that is probably going to be overlooked until it's upon us, is when we do Frederick Douglass's construction, we're going to need a temporary location for all those students. Okay, if we're building on the same site. We can rent mobile units for that school during construction, but it's not as simple as just putting a mobile unit out and having kids go through. There has to be power, internet, walkways, steps, covered areas, accessibility, safety issues. There is cost associated with that. You have the logistics of buses and cars, and then the where. If we're expanding that footprint of that school, you know, there's around 19 acres going all the way across those two ball fields, all the way across there, and all that's got to be taken into account, and we've got to do that ahead of the building process. So that's, and the cost of the mobile units is not like cheap rentals. It will be very expensive for a year's contract.
I was going to say, we went through that at New Hope when we used the trailers, and we didn't get the best trailer in the world, but safety was an issue because the students scampering in and out lunchroom. And so I think the way to go would be to reestablish a place for them to go in a school rather than rental.
There's, you know, if We talked a little bit just recently about, well, could you put the mobile units at Elm City Middle and rotate them through? The infrastructure won't hold them there either. So that's an issue as well.
Plus you would have to bus them from the elementary to the middle school, which is another transportation issue and dilemma.
So the good thing is you're going to get a new building on a site where everyone agrees is a good site, it's in the community, and everyone's familiar with it. But there's going to be growing pains as you go through that. So one thing the board could consider looking at, and this is why says possibilities. There's no point in us even exploring this unless this is something the board is willing to consider, is we could look at Toys Not being the temporary location for Frederick Douglass and reassign students in Toys Not to Forest Hills, Darden, and Elm City Middle, as they all have capacity and are adjacent to those assignment areas. And if you think about it, they butt up against each other as they go. And if we're doing a lot of construction over time, before, I'm old enough to remember, the old Springfield School, and we had some buildings that we could use. And it's a good problem to need to have space to build new buildings. But none of this will be extremely well liked at times, but the mobile units will not be ideal either, and there'll be waste in terms of, in some people's minds, of you're paying rent on a mobile unit that's just going to disappear. And trust me, they're not cheap. So, there are strengths in doing this and there are negatives in doing this. But we are at a point where we could combine those middle schools, which would also address some of the staffing issues that we have in the middle schools, with the redistribution of students and staff, and everyone would still be in place. But that could be the temporary school location for some of the new construction we need to do. It's big enough to hold it. It's right in town. And it's, internet, safety, cameras, child nutrition. One thing you could consider after that is, and this is way down the road, and this again is the board even interested in, is you could repurpose that school to be a central office and combine such as technology, child nutrition, print shop, maintenance. These are all pieces and parts that are spread across the district in areas, and you could shut some of those areas down and have parking and meeting and warehouse space in one location, and still have that building available to you. I mean, that's just a thought.
Dr. Mills?
Yes, sir.
Could you not split up the elementary school and maybe send some to New Hope, some to Gardner's maybe?
You could.
And because if you take them out of Toys Not, then they're not going to be able to play sports for the team.
They'd be able to play sports if they were reassigned to another school for.
Still play for Toys Not?
Well, they would be, that school would be, that school would be
Toys Not.
subsumed, yeah.
They could play for wherever they are assigned, but there would be no Toys Not, because not as a middle school as it currently is, if it's housing the elementary. So, in essence, Toys Not athletics would cease to be, but the students would still have capability of participating in athletics. It's just that they would
At a
be
different school?
yes.
But there would be a whole lot more competition at that school to get on those teams.
Yeah, the other thing about going to the elementary schools, and then again, this is a discussion point, this is just first look. You're looking at needing to rebuild your elementary schools. So the distribution to some of the schools may be areas where you would have to do this multiple times, and you would not want to displace students multiple times, versus some of our middle schools have been redone over time. So, but these are, again, first glance, cold, looking at this, no one's expecting, and I wouldn't expect, nor would I want to, say, oh, this makes perfect sense, I'm doing all this. There's lots of things we would need to explore and look at. What we need to know is, as we're getting into building mode, thankfully the county's supporting this and wanting to do this, we got to have a solid plan for how we get through this process without costing more to do mobile units or survive something through out there that makes sense over time.
Well, help me, because I'm not a smart guy. I'm not a building guy. I show up to things and I do stuff. I'm not a builder. But we got so much space on the existing Frederick Douglass Elementary School campus. Why can't we just build a school next to the existing school and then walk the youngins over when it's done, and then bulldoze that school and put up some ball fields if that's what we want to do?
Well,
So the answer is requirements from the state for your
Okay.
own, what they call on-site queuing, that's required now, so you don't stack cars in the road. You have to have a lot of roadway, like Jones has a lot of winding. So when you build a school now, it has to meet those guidelines. So there is a lot of property there, but it gets eaten up very quick. And your copy of what was sent to the state will give you just a layout, and if you'll see, there's not a lot of space there. You can't leave that school existing with the requirements that we have to meet, plus, stormwater runoff, retention ponds, stuff like that, so.
You say in the application, was there?
At the end, there's a kind of a brief conceptual drawing that, again, that's just for the grant purposes.
Continuity.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about toys and all, it kind of strikes me, because I was the first principal there, and it was an up and going deal. I mean, just great, absolutely great faculty. The popularity of it, we went from a little over 700 students to 900 students in about a third year. So personally, it's got a special place in my heart, and in essence, what you're talking about, you would be closing toys now. I mean, it's not that we're going to abandon it, but as a school that would be closed and repurposed. So, of course, that bothers me. But by the same token, with all fairness, if that's the route we need to go to do what's good for the county as a whole, I'm not going to stand up and on stump and argue tooth and nail, because our purpose should be what's good for the county as a whole and not one particular school.
And for what it's worth, I'm in favor of any solution that does not result in children in trailers.
I agree totally.
I agree too.
Anyone who spent time trying to manage all that on a site is no fun either way.
And when we're looking at reassignments, I'm not talking specific, but most middle school students that ask to be reassigned from a school want to be reassigned from Toys Not to somewhere else. Now, it varies all around that, but that is,
There's a pattern right
there's
now.
a pattern of that.
In recent years, because it was that, in the beginning years, it was absolute opposite. Everybody wanted to be there. And that continued, by the way, that continued beyond my tenure there. So I'm not saying it was me, because it wasn't. I think I was fortunate to be there, and I was fortunate to have a faculty and staff that worked so hard. But they continued to work after I left. But somewhere, I agree, somewhere in there, things digressed, and it just didn't have the appeal that it had had in its earlier years. So, like I say, I'm not going to argue about that from a personal standpoint, because my personal standpoint would be, I'd like to find a remedy and make it that school everybody would want to be at again, what would be my preference. But right now, we're talking about a little something different.
When you look at the movement of the students from Toys Not to the other three middle schools, I look at the numbers of students who live over near Reed Street Center, you know, who go over to Toys Not, who I think would possibly be closer to Darden. It might change your busing issues as well. Same thing for those who are closer to Elm City Middle, who have to ride the bus and come in to Toys Not. And I would assume that there is an equal number who are closer to Forest Hills. So having that shift to occur may not be the worst in the world in terms of mileage, efficiency, and the lesser need for busing of some of the students.
Again, I know it's a lot to take in all at once, but these are the kinds of things we need to go ahead and get in front of you, just get feedback, and then can bring back more as we go. But we're going to need to move quickly with some of these funds and do things for new construction, which is, again, a good problem to have, but this is not going to be just a simple process with some of the things we're dealing with.
One of the questions I had regarding Toys Not, Dr. Mills, you've answered, I believe, because at some point, the need to have somewhere for students to be, and while a new facility is either renovated or a new one built, its use, and it would be awkward to say, well, we're going to reorganize all the students and put students back. That would be kind of impractical. But repurposing the school, like you were referring to, I think answered that question.
Yeah, I think once you do that, then the school loses identity and that culture, and that's a hard restart. So.
Well, one of the things that the county commissioner said to us was, we're ready to do at least 2 schools, counting one as the need base, which the Frederick Douglass is being applied for.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, they said, and we're ready to go for a 2nd school.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're at different times, then as I look at your next page of the handout for your slides, then you're looking at using Toys Not to address shift maybe in elementary schools for that 2nd new school that the county commissioners talked about?
You could. Now, again, there might be, depending on where the board decides to place another school.
Okay.
I mean, you may have to, some people might say, well, you're driving by another school, but I mean, you're not spending money on mobile units that are going to just be rent that you're going to let go. That won't be ideal. They're much more secure in a school with video equipment, with internet, with parking, cafeteria. I mean, there's a lot of things that are a lot better than what would be with a mobile unit.
Dr. Mills,
Yes, ma'am.
one of the things I've heard over the past 2 or 3 years, and some of you may have heard it too, parents, most of the kids that attend Toys Not can't ride the bus because they're not far enough from the school to meet the requirement to get on the bus, and so they have to walk to school. And the issues that they said was the grass was so high where they were having to walk, and we don't have any control over any of that. Or when it's raining, they are just getting soaking wet. So I would assume that with an elementary child, of course, they're going to be further from Toys Not because they're going to be reassigned.
Mm-hmm.
So they would, maybe that, because I remember going by there, and one of the people had no children there. His children had left, and he says, and I looked at those kids, and every one of them was soaking wet, walking through knee-high grass to get to school, and they were going to have to sit there like that the rest of the day.
Yeah. You know, that if you look at and I've got I've got the map. I went on the GIS system and pulled this down for Toys Not's assignment area is red. And then the dark blue is Forest Hills. Elm City's up top, and this section right through here is Darden. Then you got some natural boundaries, you know, that are hard boundaries in the sense of lines.
More Boulevard.
But most of the population is concentrated down towards town. There's not much population out here. So I think you could balance some of that out for some of the rides for students, so it wouldn't be, you don't want students riding long bus rides. The walking zones, we are looking at those too, because they've not been updated in eons, and I agree with that. But even then, for some of these students, I think that it would be easy to balance. And there are about 300-something students. I think we looked at the numbers. I've got the count from me.
How many?
About 3. Let me see if I've got the most recent. This is second month, ADM, 377.
Okay.
Where did you say?
Toys
It
Not.
was 500, so.
Yes, 377 at Toys Not.
In between those three proposed schools, that might possibly be a even split of around 100 or a few more than that.
Each of
per
those
school.
schools could take a proportion of those and be fine now and in the future.
That would be Forest Hills and,
M City and
M City.
Darden. If you think about if you look at this map and think about where students live and trying to get them closest to another middle school that makes sense, any of these schools, and that, again, not a bad problem to have. It does cost us in some other areas. We want our schools full, but populations have shifted over time since the recession. It's easy to assign students to a school as close in some cases as where they are going. We don't have satellites. We don't have a lot of things that some of the larger urban areas have that would be hard to explain, hard to figure out.
Dr. Mills, one
Yes,
quick
ma'am.
question. So Toys Not of all the middle schools, Toys Not has the lowest number of attendance. Is that the lowest?
No, it's just central to Frederick Douglass and closer to it. Elm City Middle has already had some work done to it, but Spade is further away. Spade has enough space to hold all of it, but that is a long ride across from there. That would be horrible for families, I think, because they have plenty of space. But the next closest one would be Toys Not that could redistribute everywhere without long rides for students. That was just, again, initial thinking. A lot of stuff still has to be answered and looked at, but there's no point going down that path until we have further discussion, and that's where we need to go. But these are all questions we're going to have to answer and jump on pretty quickly with construction coming up. If we're fortunate enough to get the grant, and if not, then the counties have said they've committed to looking at the schools, then we will go back and have that conversation, so all that would happen very quickly. And y'all see how fast Watt's going up. It doesn't take long. You think you have time and you don't. So.
Well, the fortunate thing with this one is that we didn't have to go out looking for land.
No. And you know where it's going to be. So that takes a lot of the process out right there.
And I think if we looked at the consolidation of other elementary schools, and I mean, even if we stayed elementary schools self-contained within that same Toys Not district, which would make the most sense, if we were looking at consolidating a couple of those, we could, build on one of the current footprints.
You could.
And build new.
You could. And then, again, you've got the school right there that you could offload, and that's another part of the conversation. I've got some other things to share later on that'll talk about some of the growth from some of our conversations too to think about, because we're going to have to look back and spend some time once y'all kind of digest this and roll on. Okay. All right. Another possibility, to put this out there and start thinking is, Orrin mentioned about Winstead and Benson Bynum. And the two-story section of Winstead is really in need of extensive updates, and those are very costly. And Orrin did the work for us, and you know, it could be combined with almost entirely in Benson Bynum's footprint. And some areas could be assigned to Hearn or even Vic for that matter, depending on where the planning areas were. But one thing the board could look at is Daniels could be reassigned to the new addition of Winston. And you could close the current Daniels Center, and you could demolish that two-story section of Winston. And you've got a 1988 section of right there in the middle of town for Daniels or for other purposes right there that's in use. If you look at, I did that map for you. Right up here, left quadrant, that's Benson Bynum. Here's Winston right here at the corner of Downing and Ward. I mean, that far away from the districts. And then Hearn and Vic are all through here. You don't have room for big buses. You don't have room for a lot of expansion. The two-story building definitely needs to not be built upon because there's no elevator, there's stuff we need to do. So you're a little bit in the middle there. But you could still use that newer section for existing programs and keep Winstead. But Daniels, again, is another one that could be. The print shop could move, those kinds of things. And those programs could be offered at Winstead.
What would happen with the current Daniels? We would declare that as surplus and make a sale of that and then utilize those funds in capital or something like that?
Could, yeah.
Dr. Mills, how
Yes,
many
ma'am.
students do we have at Daniels Learning Center right now? Just
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I think that earlier was
Yeah.
the number
This is
that
a little bit under
did not
100.
exceed.
If varies, but this was second month, it was around 70. So I would say it ranges from 70 to 100.
that's feeding into the middle schools and high schools.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
If we declare a building a surplus and sell it, do we keep the revenue from it? Or does it go to the county?
First right of refusal.
County has first right of refusal.
Yep, first right of refusal goes to the county.
Yep.
But if they refuse it and we sell it, then I think the question is, do we get the revenue or does it go to the county?
But right now, they're offering to build you multiple elementary schools and supporting other projects that I've got a list of. And that building we know is in a spot where we can't build it out either. And it's another area we need to take a look at, so.
I don't think that's what he's questioning.
Oh, I know it's not, I'm just saying out loud that, yeah, I'm
Well, what I
I'm just-
was wondering is because, that's a pretty big lot right there on,
on the corner.
Ward and Downing where Winstead is. And I mean, it could be repurposed. I mean, not talking about the school, but I mean, for the entire community. I mean,
Yes.
it could be repurposed and, a new commercial site brought there that, would benefit that area
For which location?
for Winstead.
Winstead.
Yeah.
You could.
I mean, that's a little bit bigger than what we're talking about, but
But these are things I think the board needs to really take a look at with Daniels and Winstead to to how we utilize those buildings.
If what Mr. Boykin is talking about, if you do away with that two-story portion and have a remaining, since you put in here the possibility of relocating Daniels to the newest portion of Winsted, would that still leave a capability of some commercial land utilization if it were so classified by the city, zoned by the city, so that we could still use the portion that is the newest for our purposes of the Daniels Center, and then leaving the rest for the commercial utilization? Is that a possibility?
We'd have to look. We'd have to look. I can tell you. So it'd be tight, but.
So, yeah, and I'm just gonna kind of go out on a limb, but my thoughts would be that you would leave Daniels. You know, you're talking about potentially consolidating central office and all the departments into Toys Not in the future. So the print shop would probably move there. And then you could declare that site as surplus. And, I mean, it would breathe new life into that community.
How much land surrounds Daniels? Because it's kind of tight, as far as I can see, where the building is, and
I don't remember the exact acreage.
It's not much.
it's not.
It's not much.
I tried to get on the GIS this morning.
So
It's blowing up, so. I
It's
can't
less
put it
than, on each side of Daniels, less than about 30, 35 feet to the property lines, and
it's not
behind
much
it,
room, I know.
got a
Yeah.
section,
right.
but
It's not as deep as you think behind it.
It just appears to be.
It used to seem large once upon a time.
Yeah.
When I was a student there.
I was going to say, what about moving Daniels to Toys Not eventually after it's not used as
You could do that too. We had that discussion too. There's several things you could do with that facility when we get to that point. I was just looking at with Winsted, that two-story building is just, it's got to be addressed, but yeah, you could do that too.
Yeah, I was just looking at how to
Stamp it through.
how to completely, not use, to really save the money from
Yeah.
not doing that,
Mhm.
and get the ones at Daniels at a school that is much newer and has.
You could have them on a wing and they could be around yes.
And then that would still accommodate central office and everything else moving into Toys Not.
You could do that. Again, we've not explored all that because I'm not going down that path until we kind of know that that's okay to go. But yes, we talked about that some too, Ms. Puello.
Yeah, because that gives me a
I've
much
seen
better
that done.
feeling about Daniels than,
Yeah.
I mean, for the students, to go into a newer facility.
Yep. So those are all, kind of possibility and pieces that I think we need to talk about, or at least if that's not it, then let's talk about something else. But we need to do some of those things as we look at some of the new construction too.
And we are looking at ways to fill up Jones, since it's.
Yeah, I've got that
So,
coming up.
okay, you got that
Yeah,
coming up.
I think that's going to come of its own accord.
All
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
and Daniels' property is 4.14 acres.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Okay, I
I
didn't think
figured
it
it'd be
was much.
about, I actually thought it was bigger.
This is a crazy question, but it is a work session. But I'm sitting here thinking about, and I always compare it to Wake County, Leesville Road High.
Yeah.
And it is wonderful because they've got an elementary, middle, and a high school right there together. And they have no problems with filling it up and some wonderful programs. And I know we're talking about Wilson, and I know we're talking about what properties we have, but has ever any thought been given to some kind of hub such as that?
I think when we bought the land at
Jones.
the
Jones.
Jones,
That's
that
correct.
Jones has
was-
got land behind it
that
for a
was
middle school.
The possibility
That was a
of at least
discussion.
the middle school being able to be housed within there. I don't remember the discussion being
Yeah,
inclusive
that was
of
a
an
discussion.
elementary, but it was definitely inclusive
Mhm.
of a middle school in that, with that swath of land that was purchased.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I
We
know it's,
decided to leave part of it as farming
That's
while,
correct. Yes, ma'am.
until we got to that point. But there were plans when the land was purchased for additions.
it would be a wonderful thing to do if we had the land capability and just thinking far ahead in the future
Yeah.
than what we're looking at now.
Dr. Mills?
Yes, sir.
And just for anybody that's watching, on TV or anything, we're not going to do anything as far as school closures before we have public comment, correct?
No, these are all just discussions of, we gotta have a plan for what do we do when we're starting to build, and we're not even building anything yet.
Yeah.
We don't even know about the public school capital fund of Frederick Douglass until April, and that's not gonna happen overnight
So-
either. But
so-
we need to make a
yeah.
plan for the fact that the county is saying they're gonna fund these, then we need to get going, and that can run concurrently with it, so yes.
I just
we need
want it to
have
be
the-
known that, the public will have a opportunity.
But I think some of these discussion points that we tried to pull together and talk about go hand in hand with some of the discussion points you've had with the county commissioners about reducing your footprint for some of the older buildings and then allowing new buildings to be built for the funding that we have, for the enrollment that we have. All right, so-
Dr. Mills,
Yes,
can I
ma'am.
just say one comment?
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a thought about Daniel's Learning Center. And
Mhm.
a lot of times with alternative schools, they think they're just kind of pushed to the side, but they're not. They impact a lot of people. They've made a big impact there for students. And I remember when I was doing Her Pride, and I had one student that attended the Learning Center, and they had a lot of issues, but this helped them, and they become more positive in their everyday life. So just a shout out to Daniel's Learning Center, the alternative school, for all that they do there. They're small in number, but they do impact a lot of students.
I'm glad we have the setting that we have, having been somewhere where we did not have that setting.
Exactly.
It is a great avenue for students.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna push ahead, loop back through and come back. Some of the other items that have been noted over time, and we need to talk about these, or at least you need to think about these and set some priorities, because these are a little bit different from the other ones, but we talked about restrooms and changing facilities at the middle and high school athletic fields. That might be some of that other discussion piece. Talked about a painting cycle in the schools. Furniture replacement has come up a lot. And that's one I think, we heard that, and I think that's something we need to talk about and ask for. Some funding separate for athletic facilities, so folks could see the progress on that, much like our separate funding. Another one that pops up is the rear driveway at New Hope Elementary. That one has come up several times, and again, you hear about that at certain times of the year when people are getting used to Pack House Road and drop off and pick up first timers. You calling me a first time? Yes, I am. Much like the first time I dropped my daughter off at a high school, let me just tell you. I don't care what time you get there. There are things that change your perspective. Those are perspective changers.
Yes.
But, so I've got a few like that, but these are things I think we need to set priorities on and go have those conversations. Because I think what the county commissioners were saying is tell us what you need.
Yes.
So if these are some of the things we need, and you talked about some of these, then let's set priorities. I pulled up the maps and added some, really high-end graphics, those dots to show you. I was pretty proud.
Is that MS Paint?
No, that's actually on the GIS system, so they just make fun. But these are the lots that we own. That's New Hope, Summit Place, and then Pack House. So we've got that patch between Summit Place and the school, so that gives us the routing to come up behind the school now. But we've all seen the volume of traffic on Pack House Road that backs up from a safety.
Yeah.
It's stacking, there is none. So now that we have that piece between Summit Place, and there's going to be discussions about the 58 piece as well and flow, but we really need to talk about doing something about that because that growth is only going to stay there. So
Well, not
I-
only how Pack House Road is packed, but 58.
Yeah.
And particularly at the beginning of the school year, as you say, new people come on who have no idea of that flow and the backup of traffic on 58. And sometimes when you're sitting there waiting to be able to turn on to Pack House and the traffic is coming at you, coming into Wilson, it's very scary as the people are not aware that in the morning there is that backup and in the afternoon. And until you make that turn off of 58 onto Pack House, you don't breathe very well until you make that turn and at least start in that lane on Pack House ready to go in. Even if you sit on Pack House for a few minutes, it's a big safety issue. So that does need some attention. And we bought the land so that that could be done.
And these buildings, this is a building that's not gonna move. If we did any building out, it wouldn't be all the way back there through that. So there's ways to take that into consideration. So I think this is something you need to ask quickly and put on your list if that's what you're interested in, and go ahead and get started, because that's ongoing. So that was another one. There's a couple additional items that I wanted to share with you. One was gas lines for Lucama, Rock Ridge, and Springfield schools. And if we were to install gas lines for those schools, then only Fike and Lee Woodard would be left to convert. And then I wanted to show the Rock Ridge and New Hope, kind of some of the, at least a really blunt kind of growth pattern piece.
I'm pressing the pause button. Why do you want gas lines? Tell me what the advantage is.
So we're not having to transport fuel and
Okay.
all that.
Cost variations right now and getting fuel oil is sometimes an issue.
Okay, and we're talking about natural gas lines?
Yes, ma'am.
And there's no way that any of those are going to get any kind of community grant or anything?
No, we were.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
So these three are running off fuel oil?
Yes, sir,
For heat?
completely.
Really?
And the same at Fike and Lee Woodard?
Like, we've only got one of the burners on one boiler. There's 3 boilers that's on gas. We prepped it, but we didn't have the funds to do all of them. And Lee Woodard is still on fuel oil. So these are operating completely on fuel oil. Lee Woodard's completely on fuel oil. And Fike's one boiler on gas and the other 2's on fuel oil.
How far does the gas line go? Does it go to 95 or does it go to?
Here, I got
There's a map.
I'll flip, I'll show you. Here's the
The
map.
city give us a couple of
Okay.
options there. And
Put
I
this
know you
in-
got water and sewer at Springfield because of,
Yes, ma'am.
that type of stuff. But
there were various options given by the city, and we would only require a 2-inch pipe, but the city priced to 4 because they're willing to spend up for future. They would cover the additional cost if they chose to. But Lucama would come from Lily down Blaylock Road and tie into Lucama. And Rock Ridge, they actually show it one line coming from Sims, which is up near the asphalt plant. They did recommend that line's used pretty heavy when asphalt's running, so they recommended the best route for us would be Quaker Road to Wiggins Mill to Spring.
Is that the 496? Or is that the 547?
That would be Springfield Route 2.
Okay, I'm looking at this and I see Rock Ridge Route 1 at 547, and then I come down and I see Rock Ridge Route 1A at 496. So which one is near the asphalt that has
The-
the high volume?
The one, Route 1.
Route 1?
Yes, ma'am. So the recommendation would be use Springfield Route 2 to get to Springfield and then go down, let's see, that would be St. Rose Church Road, and then go up to 42 Highway, go past 95 on 42, and then turn at Rock Ridge School. Yes, ma'am.
For the record, I didn't do these maps, someone else did them for me.
It looked a lot fancier.
There, that's why you don't see any names or anything.
this one.
Yeah.
The better one.
They were terrible, terrible minutes.
It's got something to do with my neck of the woods.
I know why you can read it. It's not because it's a better man.
No, it's not.
See, when I look at this and I equated Rock Ridge 1 and Rock Ridge 1A as alternates for one, but are you telling me, and it's not my neck of the woods, so are you telling me that Springfield Middle, which is Route 2, would accommodate both Rock Ridge and Springfield in one fell swoop at the price of $315,000?
No, ma'am, that line for 315 would get you just to Springfield, but they would also tap that line on the road going beside of Dean's at 42 and feed Rock Ridge up that way off the same line. So you would add both of those two numbers together, which would be 1A and...
1A and 2,
Yes, ma'am.
so 800,000 plus. Okay.
Wouldn't the Lucama Route 4 put you in a position to better reach Lee Woodard?
It would.
I mean-
And they wouldn't cross a railroad track too, going to the Route 3. So there's different variations we looked at, and eventually, you know, this puts us in a single feed pattern like we did at Elm City, but in the future, they like to feed maybe up to the plan on ST Wooten, which gives us a double feed. So if they ever have to shut down, they can back feed their lines.
Okay,
So-
so are you saying that Lucama, the preferred, would be the Route 4?
Yes, ma'am.
And for Rock Ridge, it would be
1A, but you would have...
1A and connect it with Springfield.
You would have to
Middle.
do 2 to get 1A.
Okay.
Yep.
Who does the installation of these
The
guys?
city would handle the install,
Okay,
probably through a contractor, I would guess.
okay.
These are their numbers that we've been working for years to try to get gas to these buildings. We got Elm City done, so,
Yeah.
So the city's on board with doing this?
yes, ma'am, these are their numbers.
Oh, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. With, say you took like Route 1 going to Rock Ridge, if they're already digging to put the gas in, could they bring sewer service out there too?
They don't have sewer out on that side, so,
Isn't Springfield
yeah.
service with sewer?
Up to Dean's, they don't have anything beyond 42 going out beyond Dean's. So our sewer line actually goes down and turns there at Dean's and goes back into us. And it's pumped, really, from that creek, the pumping station there.
I know we just replaced
Yeah.
parts
Yeah.
of Rock Ridge.
Okay.
Next.
This, I had a conversation with the city about some of the housing starts and the projected housing starts, and we've looked at some of the county numbers. But the wedge from Raleigh Road up through 95, all through there, there are a significant number of housing starts that you can already see, and I would anticipate more to probably come. I did not pull in exact numbers and sit down and do all that with them, although they were very gracious and prepared information for us. But I think based on what you've seen from ORED and what you're seeing from the city as well within the limits, it would be safe to assume you need to start thinking about Rock Ridge and New Hope for some possible expansion efforts to be ready to do that or have the ability to do that over the next little bit. Jones, I think, will fill up of itself through some of the trends, and we've got some of the pre-K out there as well, and that is coming also. But you're going to start bumping at New Hope and Rock Ridge with the class size requirements, and then the land issues
that are starting. I mean, you're seeing, we're talking about putting gas lines out there. That's going to affect things as well. But I can bring back more specific information from the city of what they know. But I can tell you, if you go there and look, and they're really good to work with. If you just follow Raleigh Road from Airport all the way up there, it's just you take a coloring highlighter and just mark on either side, and that's where they're coming, and they're going to spread out from there.
How much is the acreage at New Hope, since that's in the projected and where the growth area is? And we just mentioned the need for the rear driveway. How much expansion could possibly be done at New Hope?
There's quite a bit of expansion that can be done at New Hope. The wings were added so that they
Right,
could
so
build
they
up
could be
across.
added too, but we
Yes.
have enough to add maybe at least another couple of wings through the
Yeah.
process. And the wings usually are 4 to 6 classrooms.
Yeah.
And I
Usually
think
6.
I think the same
Usually
thing needs
6.
to be considered for Rock Ridge as well.
Mhm.
But the land's not the issue, but
Right.
like it was, is it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. And I think that what you're seeing on that whole corridor across through there is just, it's going to be, it's going to come from what we're seeing from the city and the county.
And with that projected growth, then a big priority would need to be that rear drive at New Hope. Correct?
I'm not part of city planning, but I just would love to know what is prompting so much growth just in that area. Is it due to, new
Close-
Wake County?
Close to Wake County, right on the way.
And people are driving in?
And I just, if you watched the news last night, they usually have a big supply. They only have about a 12-day supply of housing that's available, and it's getting scooped up. And so with the lack of housing in that area, everything is coming this way.
That's right.
And so it's making us grow. It's jacking up the prices for properties here as well. So it's coming. And along that corridor, they're right there at 264. They can get on the highway and go with ease.
Well, they've always said that Wilson is the bedroom community to Wake, and Nightdale's just growing the leaps and bounds, but I just fret so much over living in East Wilson, like going to a Greenville. I see all this land, all these possibilities, and it's really growing because with the WAD and with the, they built a huge Dollar General, I think it is.
Right on.
And there's a lot of construction going on, and I'm not in the construction business, but it's just, I would just love to see some kind of way the city could plan for something that would cause growth. I don't know. They can't. They can't.
Yeah.
FedEx is
FedEx.
going to come up
Mm-hmm.
as well.
58.
Yeah, I read something the other day that said that Raleigh added somewhere like 24,000 jobs last year.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
And-
Gotta live somewhere.
And those jobs aren't there yet. I mean, they've still got to build those facilities. So
Right.
Mhm.
those are people that are going to be moving into the area, not be able to find a home, and have to come to Wilson,
Mhm.
Nash.
Yeah.
Not have to come to Wilson.
Well, no,
Get
but-
to come to Wilson.
Well, yeah,
Get to come to Wilson.
It is a
they have the
privilege
opportunity.
to be a citizen of
It
this
sounds
state.
like you
It
got
is.
some building recruits here. Ms. Barnes talking about, I'm gonna build a butt, and over here, Mr. Green, you might have some recruits in the building industry over here.
I just
Who
want to
knows?
know why people are moving out there, just because Mr. Borkin's doing it.
Build it and they will come.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, it's because I lived out that one.
Oh, that's a plus.
Well, that's what Blake puts in his brochure.
Dig in you.
Dr. Mills, you have given us an awful lot
Yeah, you got some homework.
for discussion points. So if we take a break, I know I've got 2 people who can't do a whole bunch of sitting right now, and I'd like to give them a stretch break. So if we take a couple-minute break, And you come back and we can begin sharing other points that we have not already shared with Dr. Mills when we come back.
Okay.
Okay? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, please. So Ms. Boyette and Mr. Mercer, please get your rise and shine.
I put it right
I hope you can rise and shine.
there. First phase had 17 lots. I sold all 17 lots and houses in 4 days. And everybody that purchased a home came out of Lake County.
I believe you. I believe you.
It's only like a 35-minute drive to Raleigh proper. I mean, you can be into downtown Raleigh in 35 minutes.
Now, see, my daughter lives in Raleigh. She's in North Raleigh, and she's in Long something. I can't remember that story. And I tell you what, she moved from one house to another because she was, divorcing. The house she moved from sold for $600 and some thousand, and when the house she bought was close to $400,000. And now when they look at the estimate of what it's going to eventually be, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
So like the houses that I'm building, they're buying for about $200. And that same house, if you picked it up and put it in Wake County, it would be $450.
Do you feel, what do you call it? There's my husband, we talk about when we build a house on a flat surface and you don't have any under slab.
That's just about exclusively.
Okay. My son-in-law worked for, until getting out of a big company in Raleigh, and they went bankrupt after when we had the last big major, I wouldn't call it recession. I'm not thinking the name of it.
You don't have your green on.
I know, and I walked there, I thought about it, I had a green sweater out. Let me tell you what happened. My eyes are not functioning, because last night I looked at 10:30 for this meeting. And here I was at 10 to 10, dressed. I wouldn't have had this on, I would have had green, but I just simply thought it was 10:30.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
So I said I need to get my eyes checked evidently, because I thought I saw 10:30. So that's why I have
Did you send
no.
your girls off in green? Excuse me.
They were like, I got a green ring on.
I'm a
Oh
grab.
my
Look,
goodness, is like, I want somebody to pinch me.
I got a green pink face. I was looking around for green. I'll have to grab that jacket of our lawyer and put it around me. I don't have a green. You have a green? No, I don't either.
I know they kind of looked at me like, yeah, we ain't even saying that for, but I didn't want to read that.
No, I'm talking right. I just stand here sort of proper.
Hello, Stretch.
I'm coming along. They just about killed me yesterday. They brought a specialist in at PT, and he had a metal thing with a rounded top, and he went in there between all the stuff around my knee to break it. Yes.
To break up
Oh, right. We called it adhesion, scar tissue.
That has been there and developed.
I'm gonna get a knee
He
replacement, so.
said, think about the fat under a cheek, and he says, we have it too, and it will clump up when they have surgery or trauma, and
And if it doesn't get moved,
and they
it becomes
smoothed it
permanent.
out.
That had to
You
be
could
painful.
survive it. Yeah, she said,
Now, did you do orthoscopic or you did it?
Yes.
You did it.
yeah, I wish I had had the whole knee replaced, because it couldn't hurt any worse.
Yeah, I'm close to getting mine done.
When you're ready, you'll know it. Nobody will have to tell you.
Yeah, yes, they have been supposed to find out. Some other stuff.
Well, I just didn't want that to get,
No.
because I mean, yeah, the mood's already there, so. I was just telling Ms. Boyette, I said what I said, because
Are you showing
the newspaper articles that come out about the city.
Yes.
And I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get lumped into
They're
that.
teasing me about not having green. I said, I'm gonna grab her green jacket in a minute and put it on so
I think you just go on the
So,
offensive.
I mean, it's
and
better
just
go ahead and
check.
say it right now.
Yes,
Green or not.
absolutely.
Don't even think about it.
Miss Barnes, you want me to put my jacket on the back of your?
I'm good. She already pinched me now. I picked up my pencil has green, so.
Who pinched you?
Miss Boyette, she said, she said, you as an elementary teacher, you should know to have on green.
You should have said I have it on my name badge. Do you have your name badge?
Yes.
And
You don't have on green either. Everybody's
he got on
pinching it.
socks.
Yeah, I tried to get it too.
Oh, maybe I do too, actually.
Karen tell you
Yes,
about.
I do.
Oh, boy.
And
no green.
Mr. Borkin reminded me.
Mr. Letchworth, I'm really serious about the job that
It takes all of them.
How are you? I'm sorry I had to swipe you. I'm in a meeting. I'm on a break right now, but when you called, it was like I saw you and I hit the message button. You wanted to know if I had an invite
How's
to
Mr.
your
Mercer say he's
event this
doing?
afternoon.
Oh, you got to
I
see
have
his
found-
leg, it looks horrible.
I don't want to stick us on
Tomorrow.
That's Susie. Yeah, that's what.
Graduated,
My invitation is today at 5:15.
Had her kids? Yeah, well, had her son, her daughter.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's what. I think her daughter came after, I think. Oh, yeah, it was Lloyd Jackson.
Okay, and it's at the social services building? Okay.
I'm gonna look back at my messages. I don't know why I thought it was a 10:30 meeting.
do in that direction, I don't know. But I think that would best serve everybody.
So on the list that was provided, and there's no pagination on the slides, so you have to flip through for quite a bit
You just had to get that in there,
to
didn't you?
get the additional items that have been noted. Restrooms and changing facilities for all high schools and middle school outdoor athletic fields. So I'm taking it that that's what is that what you're referring to as the athletic field house? Yes, okay.
And when we get the bids, those bids included the equipment, or some of them, that the package that the company, the CPL company, included the equipment, like the hurdles and the long, what's the thing you jump over, the pole vault. And some of that was in the original specs.
It included the pit for the pole vault, but I don't remember that it included the actual hurdles.
We can go back and look, I could be wrong, but I know that the equipment, some of the
Because
equipment
that was
included.
going to be a separate cost, but they talked about the footprint for, required for pole vault and that, because that's that sanded area and all. But I don't recall that
Okay,
hurdles
well,
were
you
apart.
may be right, but in other words, the track is of no value, well, is of little value if you don't have the equipment at all three of them.
Right, but what they were doing was the lanes, the prep of those, the accompanying side areas for like pole vault and whatever, but we can go back and look at that and see if it included equipment, but I don't believe it
It
did.
seems like it did not.
But there's agreement among us that we need it.
Mhm.
Yes.
That was my thinking, because before we start tackling the elementary schools and redirecting students and things, I would feel so much better if we did complete our tasks, or from our field trip that we took, we can get all those things completed. And the county commission seems as though they're ready and to make sure that all of the amenities, I guess, are there with it, so.
I think we're going to have to multitask, because if we just focus on one, then you're down the road, 6 months here, 6 months here, you're down the road, you're correction, building, whatever it is, then we're going to be at the same place we are.
I
So,
didn't mean that we would not look at the elementary schools, because we're already in the planning stage for what we contemplate this would look like. But I'm just saying, in addition to what we are already looking at for next steps, that we do try to round out those other programs at three high schools.
I agree, we have to do the completion of those things that were on the field trip, but we have to do these other things
Oh, I agree.
along with, and that's
Agree.
why it's going to take these multiple work sessions in order to be able to get us to the point of getting where we want to be and where the county commissioners want us to be in a fairly concise bit of time.
So what's our next step here? RFQ for the track project, add in potential field house refurbishment, and then maybe get additional RFQs for Bedingfield and Fike for field houses as well?
If that's what the board wants us to talk to.
I would like to
county
see
about.
that.
I would.
Okay.
So multiple RFQs at the same time, one for refurbishment, but one for total construction and the like.
Well, one for refurbishment at Hunt, because I think that's the only one that has a standalone field house on that track footprint.
Right,
And then new at Bedingfield and Fike.
yes. Now, because this is a work session, and these will be work sessions, once we come to some consensus today, this needs to be a part of the agenda for the regular board meeting, so that if this is not already on the agenda, we can add that to the agenda for Monday. I know that the board packets usually go out today, so if there is a placeholder, if it's not already been done on the agenda, or else we entertain a motion at the actual meeting if the packets have already been developed, and amend the agenda to include whatever facilities issues we have discussion about and come to a consensus of today.
The board can do its preference of amending the proposed agenda on Monday night before it approves it. If that's the easiest, it sounds like that's the
That's
preference.
probably easier.
Would that be something that we need to add to the Administrative Services Committee, or would it be some other, where would it be?
I think if what we do in here today can serve as part of the administrative services agenda, whatever is already set for that agenda for Monday, for your committee meeting, it could still come in a motion from the Administrative Services Committee that the, whatever is at consensus by the board in this work session, and could be added with the amended agenda on Monday.
Yes.
Ms. Boyette?
I agree with what we talked about, requests for the field houses. Could we also, since we are going to be letting the, or selecting the construction bidder or bids for Bedingfield, could we go ahead and do the equipment for the tracks? Fight doesn't have everything they need.
I don't think any of them do.
No, I know they don't, because Christie's built some, but they jump on.
Do we need a bid for that? Do we authorize the administration to bring back cost for equipment for each of the schools? And if I'm not mistaken, there was a $160,000 difference between what was already allocated by the county commissioners and with the $123,000 grant that's supplanting what was already set. Can we look at those funds for equipment purposes? Would that still fall under construction, or would we have to do something else?
It's still capital.
Capital,
Yeah, it
I
would be
mean.
capital.
It's still capital in the sense as long as you capture it that way,
Okay.
as long as it fits.
And I'd like for it to include a timing system, one per school. Because there's
Okay.
something-
I mean, it's
Okay,
relative.
but can we look at that $123,000 savings that we now see because we got the athletic grant? Can we look at that to see if that covers the cost of equipment and timing devices for each of the schools?
And I agree with Ms. Boyette.
Because that's athletic.
The relative cost is not tremendous. And if each school had theirs, that would give them opportunities to use it in-house for tryouts or practices or whenever, as opposed to trying to see who's got it and hunt it down sometime. So
I'm just trying to see how we can direct the administration. I hear equipment, I hear timing devices, but if we can identify so that we can direct administration to, in conjunction with RFQs for those field houses, whether refurbishment or new, and direct the administration to explore the cost for equipment, all equipment, hurdles, timing devices, whatever it happens to be, to make sure that the schools are properly outfitted. Yes, no?
Yes, let's do that. I think that's great.
So I think what you're asking us to do then is hold on the application of that K-12 grant to the tennis courts until we see all that? Is that what you're doing as well? Is that what the board's directing us to
No, do that. We
No?
want to find out though if that saved that
No, you
windfall
wanna
that we
use that
have,
for
we'll
tennis?
cover.
We'll cover
Yeah.
capital in terms of athletic equipment?
because as Chairwoman Fitch said, we're not giving that back.
No. Nothing is going back. No, nothing is going back. I'm just trying to see how you want to do it.
I like the thought of putting it all in a package. And when they come up and present what the rendering would look like for the track, you know, they can say, well, these hurdles are going to be here, and just let them supply it. So it's just one number that we have to write them a check for.
Right, and they can probably get a much better price on it than we can. And our field house should have enough space in it to store those hurdles, and, well, the equipment that we have. So, because
And of course, and I'm not familiar with the layout at Hunt as well as I should, but I'm sure others are. But the field house, you know, accommodates more than just a track and football. Hopefully, it can be situated so it accommodates as many of the athletic areas as practical.
Help me with my non-athletic field house. Does that include announcer's box and all of that? That's
No,
totally
that's-
different. And
that's-
they all have that already?
Yep.
I'm done. Good. So, Mr. Letchworth?
Can we look at the option both ways? Because sometimes if it's marked in with a contract, they'll get 10% markup on it, and we get it priced both ways, so if we can save, you know, getting the exact same equipment.
Yeah.
Some things are on state contracts, so we can buy them cheaper, which you'll see at Monday night's board
Okay.
meeting, what we've done to drop our costs down.
And could we do that not item by item, more or less?
Yeah, we can do it both
We
ways.
can save money on and let them provide the others.
I have a question too, because you keep adding on, but we did talk about the restroom facilities. Is that included in anything at all? I know the one that Bedingfield seems like was more in need of repair than the other two.
Well, I think Hunt was needing to do it.
Yeah.
So we just it keeps rolling along, I know. But,
Well, if field house is including, I would think it would be including restrooms as well as the change.
They got a separate field house.
Field houses is athletes visiting and home athletic
Oh, yes.
space for changing and meeting halftime and fussing at halftime, whatever it might be the case.
so the restrooms are just as important as
Yeah.
the field house,
But,
you know.
Yeah, but bathrooms you're talking about are for the public bathrooms.
Yeah, I guess, spectators.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna make the motion because your committee is here. And if this, if this committee
Good luck.
is making
Lord have
a consensus in today's meeting, you don't have to discuss it at your actual meeting on Monday. There are some other issues that may be on the agenda for that. Then this would still come from you, and I think Dr. Williams can assist you in making sure that the motion is in keeping with what everybody is asking for.
I'll do it the way you tell me, Dr. Williams.
Got it all right here, yes, sir.
You're a good man.
And if there's any question, I'm sure that will prompt a further discussion to make sure that it's clear on Monday evening. Okay? So, is the track situation and field house situation and equipment, are we at a good point?
Track, field
I
house,
think
bathroom,
so.
equipment discussion.
Yeah, you just muttered it.
We can flush it out.
All right, so, let's move. Whew. Let's move on to,
You ever think looking at calendars would be better than something?
well, I've got two people who don't have calendars with them.
Well, I got it in my head, so.
Oh, okay.
There you go, Val.
All right, so what kind of timetable are we looking at to be having these ongoing continued discussions? Are we looking at more frequently than once a month? Are we looking at a work session as well as our monthly meeting?
I like the idea of doing them later in the week before our monthly meeting.
Yeah. I think you should at least try for that to get started, because you've got to set some priorities on some of these other items we talked about. We'll have to have time to go back and research and prepare things, but by the time we hear about some of the things for Frederick Douglass, for example, or to go talk to the county manager or the county commissioners, then we've got to have time to prepare information to bring back to you. But when we come in and do this, then we got to make a decision and go, because that'll be 2 months gone.
Dr.
Okay.
Mills?
Yes, sir.
So assuming that we get this, would say we don't get this grant,
Yep.
then I guess that we would probably take the second school that the county has agreed to fund and still do Frederick Douglass. So either way, Frederick Douglass. is
That would
gonna
make
get done.
sense to me, yep.
So from where we are right now, if we get word in 30 days that we're going to get this grant, how quickly are we going to move on that?
I'll break it down tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I'm asking. I mean, how quick do we need to know where to send the
2
students?
weeks?
Don't do that.
Can
We're
we
sending them to Beverly's.
We've already got the RFQ out.
can we
so they-
have in
Yeah.
preparation,
Depending on where the county takes the money from and they have to do their part, it's quick. I mean, so,
So
could we
the-
put out
RFQ's out for
before we put
architect
out a
already.
bid?
we've already got
Well,
the,
RFQ out already for the architect.
Yeah, didn't we approve that? last
yeah,
time?
we've already done the
I remember stuff.
so
Okay.
No,
let's,
it's out right now on the street for
Yeah.
bids.
Yeah.
They're due
Oh,
back at the
okay.
end
We
of
sent
the
it
month.
out last meeting.
you would want to tell
Right.
parents to plan for that, so when this school year starts back, they're not coming back to,
So it
Frederick
needs to be
Douglass.
before the next school year
Yeah.
starts.
Not bids, qualifications, excuse me, that we'll have them at the end of the month.
otherwise you're moving them twice in the middle of the year, and it's just, it's a mess.
So we really need to move pretty quick on that.
That's why I think, this is, some of these priorities, you need to look at them and say, I like this, or if we're gonna ask for things, then let's set it this and go have a conversation, but the other ones are gonna be fast.
Okay, so do you want us to meet within the next 2 weeks, or
I'd like to
3
meet
weeks?
again a little bit quicker this time,
Tell
because
me
I think
when.
we need to set these priorities
you tell me
after
when?
this one. How about in between the March meeting and the April meeting, just instead of waiting until right before it this time, just at least squeeze one in about 2 weeks after.
All right, we meet on the 21st, which is this coming Monday. So how about on Wednesday, the 30th?
I can do
I
that.
have no problem with
I
that.
like Wednesdays.
Me
I
too.
don't see anything on my calendar for that day.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I could do early afternoon on Wednesday.
Okay, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon? 1 o'clock in the afternoon sound good, Mrs. Powell? We
Yes.
haven't heard from you.
Oh, I said something you didn't hear.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, it's
So
okay.
Wednesday, the 30th of March at 1 o'clock, we'll have another facilities work session.
And I would ask that what you need to be prepared to do at that meeting is, some of these ancillary items we talked about, you need to put them in priority for you of what we may want to go ask for that are outside of construction. Does that make sense?
You just said 1 o'clock, right?
Say it in a, well,
You take all this stuff we talked about that's not building new schools and decide which one is most important to you, so we can set priorities if we're going to ask for additional things. Prioritize, or add to the list and prioritize.
Okay, so that,
Whether it's a driveway, or whether it's
okay.
painting cycle, or whether, see what I'm saying?
okay, but it's still capital. Okay.
Yep, yep. I
So
just, I put as much as we could all remember on the list.
So in that, are we including the renovations?
No,
of-
that's already covered.
That's covered, okay. So we are at this,
Other items to consider.
Was that Wednesday, March the 30th? That's correct.
I can send you the bulleted list of just the things, and y'all can add to it, whatever, but we gotta get that prioritized, and you've still got another planning document, but these are things we talked about before that would be big ticket items that still need to be done, but
okay,
there needs to be some direction. If these aren't it, then what are they?
okay.
Because the same time we're building, we need to start doing this too.
Okay, so this is this sheet
And I
right
can
here.
clean it up and send it out, post it,
Okay,
all that kind of stuff.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be one. I mean,
No,
like,
no,
you do the
no.
new home
Yes,
driveway
yes.
and the painting
Yes,
cycle at the
yes.
same time.
I
Yes.
think the commissioners
Yes.
were very open about, tell us what you need and hit set priorities, but, I mean, 7 of you have to say, these are the things we want to start first.
Okay.
Well, at what point do you start coming up with the secondary school?
As soon as we find out about the first one and get that going, then I think you need to start working on the second one.
All right.
I don't think, because it's,
So whatever
'cause-
date that the state makes its announcement, then we're in here right after then, looking at what our second one will be.
you need to be rolling that fast based on the conversation the commissioners had,
All right?
because they're saying we're prepared to build, and I think you need to jump on that.
All right, I think the date given for the proposed announcement by the state was April the
12th?
12th. Okay, so that's just before our April board meeting, because our April board meeting is on the 18th. Do you
It's
want to
the
have a
25th.
work session?
25th?
April
25th.
25th is the next board meeting,
Okay.
because of spring break, I believe.
Oh, that's right, we moved it, thank you so much.
Did you borrow Henry's calendar?
No,
before you
I'm not
start
borrowing,
the show?
I'm not borrowing Henry's calendar, I'm correcting mine, thank you. Thank you for that
I
correction.
know, I'm weak.
Oh, yeah.
So do we want to,
Ms. Horson has reminded me, thankfully, she's back. The budget work session is March 28th. Do you want to combine that one, we're already scheduled for that?
That makes sense.
That would make
March,
As
March,
opposed to the 30th.
Yep. We've already committed to that one. Now, it's not a Wednesday for you Wednesday lovers.
it's a Monday, it's a Monday. March the 28th is the budget work session,
Mhm.
and that's scheduled for what time?
4.
4 o'clock.
So the question is, do you want to combine the budget work session with another facilities work session?
We can meet
Yes.
right after lunch and go into that.
Now, I
1
do
o'clock,
have something on my calendar that morning.
And I have something for 3 o'clock, so I
I
can't
prefer to
do.
keep them separate, because that's one
Okay.
long meeting.
Okay. That's fine with me. We'll do whatever the board would like.
Actually, the budget work session usually is not very
Goes kind
long.
of quick.
Okay.
It goes relatively quick.
Okay.
So if we want to combine and take care of the work session for budget and then move into facilities,
That's doable for me.
Let's combine them.
And so the time would change to what?
stay at 4 o'clock.
Let's do stay at 4 and we'd be done, and we could be done by 7 at the latest. I wouldn't want to go longer than that. That's long.
Mm-hmm.
If you've done your homework, and if you come prepared, and if you bring your calendars. Don't start.
Suppose we plan the 28th and see how far we get, and then if we get into it, then
Then
we
roll
can
to the
cancel the 30th.
Yeah,
But let's don't take it off yet.
I'm good with that. Anything that keeps us on track to keep making decisions and going, I'm good. I think this is a good issue to have, to be able to go and have conversation.
Right. Have you enough direction at this point, Dr. Mills?
I've got plenty.
Members of the board?
I mean, we can give you more.
No, that's fine. I know you're looking out for me.
Anything else for today? And members of the board, I'll entertain a motion in regards to adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, excuse me.
Did you want to set the April date, like in anticipation of the announcement of the needs-based capital?
I
Yes.
think we
Grant.
should.
And that date was the 12th,
12th.
so let's look at,
I'm not available the week of spring break.
is that spring break week?
That's a good thing. Stick with that.
Is that spring break week or is
Spring
the
break,
next week?
Spring break week is the following
The
week.
22nd is spring break.
Yeah, okay. So this would be prior to the spring break,
It have to be.
the 13th,
That's a Wednesday the 13th.
Wednesday the 13th.
How about that?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
You're assuming DPI is gonna meet their deadline.
Yes, we
I do
are.
not want to go there, but
I'm gonna say it. That's a lot of ifs.
We don't want to go there?
but you can cancel it
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't have the information
okay.
at any notice, without.
Is that a quick process in cancellation, Ms.
Yeah.
Horson, for the newspaper and whatever else? All right. Then do you want to schedule that for the 13th?
Yes.
What time, please?
1 o'clock. Does 1 o'clock work?
What about the ones that are working?
Mr. Green?
Oh, I'm trying to read lips right now. It's-
Cognia's coming on 13th.
Our accreditation visit, that is the fourth and final day.
Oh, I see it on there now. So-
Uh-oh.
And I don't know how much you will have input into that. I'm sure you will be interviewed, but I don't know what day.
I'm not talking to anybody without a subpoena.
Okay, so you finish up with Cognia on
Look
the
where that goes.
13th?
Yes, ma'am.
So how about the 14th or the 15th? Thursday or Friday?
That's Good Friday, just so
Well, that
you
is Good Friday.
Yes. Thursdays are always hard for me.
Yeah, I have therapy, so.
Yeah.
Well, let's assume they're gonna meet their timeline and tell us on the 12th. Then we've got break.
And then it's board meeting.
Yeah, why don't we just do it at the board?
Well,
board
that's a
meeting, 'cause
2-week wait.
I'm gonna take a break, so I'm just gonna take a break, Dr. Pitt.
I understand, but you're the one who said we need these quick, fast, and in a hurry now, so.
Yeah,
I'm
Dr. Bill
just,
and I are going to King's Dominion.
yeah, we're gonna ride the rides, don't you? Well,
well, we're gonna be
I think we
riding
should,
rides.
I think we should do it all, I mean, are we gonna be in their way if we're meeting, or, like, how big of a
No.
position is the fourth day of Cognia?
just depends, we don't know.
The fourth day is usually, they have the morning where they meet, and then the afternoon is where they'll want to present their findings. So if there's
To whom? To administration?
anybody who will attend.
So why don't we roll those two things together? We can get,
Good.
maybe we can announce a new school, and then maybe get.
Okay.
There you go. You
Okay.
could,
No comment.
that is an idea, that we could do that.
So,
Let's
Yes, that's a good idea.
Okay.
13th.
so we're back to the 13th?
I still
Yes.
like that better
I
before we
like
get
that.
too far in. if we
All right.
do it.
Good.
See?
And we just rotate
I
through if
just
we need
did what you
to.
asked me to do, sir. So the 13th, and we're looking at
1 o'clock.
what time? 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
I'm good with that.
I got a date at 4
April
o'clock.
13th.
April 13th, 1 o'clock.
For the
My
specific
calendar's still in
purpose
that.
of
Of
receiving.
the accreditation report and for facility work study.
Right.
Just fix that, so we can- Friday the 13th, let's do that.
Wow.
That's how unlucky it is.
But would you cancel it if you didn't have information from DPI, or would you continue?
Well, if we've couched it such that it's accreditation and facility work session, then we can still hear the accreditation
Yes.
report and the work session would be canceled.
Got it.
All right? Anything else? Now the chair will entertain that motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by the sign of aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. We are now adjourned.